Testing, testing. Hello, this is Liz. Welcome to Monday. I double checked. It is Monday. So, past couple weeks I've been doing what I personally watched over the weekend, but I decided I'm going to switch it up. And on Mondays, I'm going to be giving you a different type of recommendation. You've probably heard me talk a lot about different directors on this show. So I'm going to give a director recommendation every Monday. And one that hopefully maybe you've heard of, but someone where you haven't seen a ton of their work, or they're only known for one type of genre and they actually have a lot more out there. So today I'm going to start with one of my favorite directors, and probably, I would just say, in the history of film, one of, if not the greatest director to ever lived, which is Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. The man, I mean, you've probably heard at the very least of the Seven Samurai. He's directed a lot of notable films: the aforementioned Seven Samurai, Rashomon, Ran, Throne of Blood, The Hidden Fortress, Yojimbo, and Ikiru. So, basic biographical info: he started making films in the 1930s, born in 1910, so he got started in his 20s, died in 1998, and pretty much worked almost until his death. Um, he made films in the 40s, but his big decade was the 1950s, and that started with his film Rashomon, which is a tale of crime and murder told from four different perspectives. And while Japanese cinema there was, I think, pretty good. If you go back and watch films from the 30s and 40s, I mean, Ozu was already working at that point. There were good films being made, but Rashomon was the film that got the rest of the world to notice Japanese cinema. It won awards all over, and it actually won Best Foreign Feature at the Oscars that year. So Rashomon's definitely one to check out. The one that's probably the most accessible and the one most people have heard of is 1954 epic The Seven Samurai. And I mean, I can't really say too much more about this movie. Everything that's been said about it has already been said. But it influenced not just, I mean, everyone knows it influenced Magnificent Seven, but it influenced not just one movie. It influenced all action films, team up films since then. This created the modern blueprint for action films, for buddy films. And even if you watch certain battle scenes and then you watch this movie, you see the influence there. Definitely one of the top five most influential films ever made. Other films that have actually inspired other movies of his: The Hidden Fortress. You may have heard of this because it influenced a tiny little space indie movie called Star Wars. And George Lucas actually came into play in 1980 with Kurosawa when, you know, Kurosawa went through a tough professional period. He couldn't get anyone to make his movies. He had an idea for this film called Kagemusha. And George Lucas himself, big fan of the guy, just convinced Fox and another studio to help fund that feature. And the film Yojimbo, if you've ever seen Fistful of Dollars, that's Yojimbo. Um, Also, more recently, if you saw Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs, Wes Anderson said this was inspired by his filming techniques. And other big filmmakers like Ingmar Bergman, Federico Fellini, I cannot say his name, Satyajit Ray, a great Indian filmmaker, have all said that this man is an inspiration to him. So why is he so influential? I think number one, he can do drama, he can do historical films, he can do action, he can do them all really well, and in some cases combines them. The Seven Samurai is not just an action movie; it has a number of great dramatic moments. It has a number of comedic moments. It even has some romance in there. He is someone who can do it all, and I think that's why his films endure in many cases. He was also a technical pioneer. He employed techniques such as the axial cut, which is where it moves toward and away from the subject to help show motion, and then he also uses a series of jump cuts rather than tracking shots to show action. And you have to remember, in the 1940s and 50s, this was considered extremely, new wave. Similar to the film Breathless, where if you watch it now, you're like, what's the big deal? You have to keep in context that at this point in time, these techniques were really cutting edge and you just didn't see them utilized in film. So if I had to say what movies of his I would absolutely recommend, I have a few that I own. I don't own all of them because the Criterion Collection pretty much owns all of his movies, and those are expensive. But I would definitely say start with The Seven Samurai. The runtime might scare you. It is over 3 hours, but this is a film that moves very quickly, and you love all the characters. You'll probably get introduced to a great actor named Toshiro Mifune, who turned 100 this year. So start with The Seven Samurai. If you want to watch another movie, if you're like, I do not want to devote 3.5 hours, I would recommend my personal favorite Kurosawa, Throne of Blood. Don't worry, it's not a slasher. It is actually an adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Kurosawa himself was a big fan of Western literature. He directed a number of Russian novels, but he directed at least three Shakespearean stories into films. So first was Throne of Blood, which is a retelling of Macbeth, and it sets it in feudal era Japan. So you have samurais, you have warlords rather than, a Scottish lord. You have this one Japanese ghost rather than a trio of three witches. And the final battle, rather than just a sword fight between the two, you have this great scene where it is just a barrage of arrows being shot at one person. And actually, fun fact, those were real arrows, and Kurosawa talked to Mifune, he used again to play in this movie, to kind of coordinate. He would signal where he's running so the archers could shoot and not hit him. It's a good example of actor and director kind of working together to create a good scene. I would recommend that. I would recommend The Hidden Fortress. If you're a Star Wars fan, you want to see part of where this all began. It's the template. I would also recommend, if you want something a bit more quiet, the drama Akira. That is about a civil servant. He finds out he has cancer, and he just starts to reevaluate his life and what's important. And unfortunately, it's out of print, but if you can find it or find someone who has a copy, Ron is great. It is an adaptation of King Lear. It is one of my favorite characters in cinema history, Lady Kaede. It's one of his few films in color, and it looks gorgeous. Again, I kind of feel like everything that's been said about this guy has already been said. Pretty much anyone who makes movies is going to name at least one of his films as an influence. And definitely people who were making films in the 70s were like, this guy has inspired my entire career. So I would definitely recommend you checking him out. I'll post some links for further reading and an article that recommends his 10 essential movies. And hopefully you'll check him out. I know some people get scared when they hear foreign director, but as Bong Joon-ho said this year, once you learn to get past subtitles, there's a whole new world of movies out there for you. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with What's on Netflix. Have a great day.